welcome to Love and the Planets. And this week we're talking about the week of October 9th. And I'm Margaret Gray in Dublin, Ireland.
And I'm Armand Diaz in New York.
So Armand, as always, we have a very busy week. I mean, there's two huge things happening this week in terms of relationships. Of course, Jupiter is going into Scorpio and Venus is moving into Libra, plus a whole load of aspects between Venus and the outer planets and Mars and the planets. So another busy week.
We get off to a start, we got the moon in sociable Gemini, and we have, at the same time we have on Monday, we have Pluto being squared by the sun. It's definitely, we get off to a very intense start, and then at midweek, the moon goes into Cancer, and Venus makes some aspects, and Jupiter and Venus change signs at the end of the week. It's a jumble.
Yep, a bit of a roller coaster. So I guess with the Mercury aspects, just to say this week, really to kind of a little bit of word of caution of how you communicate. We've said this several times before, but when Mercury, makes an aspect with these big outer planets, it means that even though we might have the best intention of the world of communicating in a kind of nice way, in a sociable way, diplomatic way, it doesn't always come out like that. So with the sun in particular, conjunct Mercury, squaring Pluto in Capricorn, we might find ourselves before we know it having conversations that are really intense, even though we didn't intend to. So if we don't want an intense conversation, maybe avoid it on Monday or Tuesday. Yes.
Well, you know what though, when we get to Saturday, Mercury comes opposite Uranus, and if you've been keeping it inside, the pressure cooker gets to a point and boom. So, maybe it'd be better to let a little steam off here and there. Although I agree with you, especially Venus is making some aspects. Venus made a lot of aspects last week that probably set the table for what happens this week. But Venus has got some stuff going on at midweek.
Yes, and Venus and Mars are still traveling kind of pretty close together in Virgo, which, is an earth sign. So it's really these two planets of relationships are kind of very much in practical mode, and they're kind of pretty kind of private in that sign. And yet here they are, quincunx Uranus in Aries. So it feels like certainly, a good time for something new. So maybe if there's, a new relationship pending or something, that you're starting with somebody, it might be. But of course, when Uranus comes into the picture, we don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes it can be a little explosive. So again, a little word of caution, maybe go gently, go easily, and, be really conscious of what you do in relationships this week.
I think especially at the back end of the week, as we have Venus, at midweek, we have Venus, quincunx Uranus, and then opposite Chiron, which can, as you like to say, can be a little ouchy. I do get the sense, though, that at the end of the week, from, let's say, Thursday onwards, that's when things are likely to blow. I think we may sort of simmer for a while, but when we get to the end of the week, that's where we've really got our challenges in terms of how things are going to manifest. But the big news this week, I would have to say, is that we have the two planets changing signs. We have Jupiter going into Scorpio, and then Venus is going home to her second home in Libra.
Absolutely. I mean, what do you make of this move of Jupiter into Scorpio, Armand? Because, Jupiter means it's moving out of Libra, the planet of relationships. So it's kind of been, I think it's had an amazing effect the last, 12 months of trying to keep some balance, some balance in the world, some balance in our interactions with others, some balance in our relationships. So now that it's going into Scorpio, it kind of feels like that element of balance might be going, and we're in a whole different arena. So yeah, what are your initial thoughts?
Jupiter in Libra, it's balance, it's harmony, it's diplomacy. Let's go through channels. Let's talk about this. Let's consider. In Scorpio, not so much. In Scorpio, we're talking about an additional layer of intensity that's going to affect relationships. I think that, Scorpio is a sign we associate very much with sexuality too, and intimacy and connection. And I think that there's going to be both a strong draw towards having the intimate connection in the sense of emotional connection, but there's also quite a bit of sexual energy about Jupiter going into Scorpio, and I think Uh, Libra is a sign that's ready to sort of like take a step back and see what the right thing to do is in a situation and how to balance it. Scorpio, not so much. Scorpio is a little bit more of a learn by doing sign, at least in some respects. So there's likely to be a lot of extra sexual intensity with Jupiter and Scorpio.
Certainly a lot of passion as well. And one of the things, I do like, and of course I would say that with my moon in Scorpio, but I think, Jupiter going into Scorpio brings honesty. It's like we can't, we can't pretend so much. So I think the truth comes up and it's much easier to deal with that. It's almost like it comes up. Whereas I think when Jupiter was in Libra, there's more of that diplomacy. So maybe hiding things and being a little, just diplomatic rather than honest. Whereas I think in Scorpio, it will be. But however, if there are things that are hidden in relationships, this will certainly, bring them to light. So,
Well, but it's when Saturn went through Scorpio, we had that same things coming out type of thing. But it's a little different when we have Jupiter in there. It's like Saturn was like, here comes out the secrets. Jupiter's a little bit more like, it's okay. Yeah, this is true. This is what I'm about, or this is what you're about. A little bit more benevolent type of. It's okay.
That is very true. That's so true. That's a very good point. And I think it's worth kind of remembering, particularly with so many energies around. And then, of course, we have Venus. Aphrodite moves into her own sign of Libra. So that kind of, in a way, balances out Jupiter moving out. And Venus in Libra is, of course, about, back to diplomacy and back to balance and back to wanting to please. I think there's an aspect of Venus in Libra that is very good at thinking, okay, I'd like to do this, but what would you like to do? And of course, the key is, trying to make decisions, because there can be a little bit of that indecision. But I think it certainly does balance off those scorpionic energies in terms of something that's very pleasing. There's a pleasing sense about it.
For the time that she's in there, that's true. I think though, also, Venus in Libra, it's in one of her home signs, but there's a little bit of graciousness and decorum that comes with Venus in Libra. It's not Venus in Taurus, which is very sensual, and some of the other of the more outgoing signs where she's really favoring parties and so on. Maybe a nice formal engagement would be okay. But Venus in Libra is a tad bit more reserved than I think in some of the other signs. I think she'll feel more herself than in Virgo, but yeah, there's a little bit of a we should mind our manners. We should say it in a nice way. We should go about it as graciously as possible.
Well, she's very civilized, isn't she, in Libra? It's that kind of aspect of enjoying beauty, but a civilized kind of beauty rather than necessarily a kind of based in nature beauty. So it's got, and of course, very connected with the arts. So, if people are thinking of, spending time with loved ones or whatever, I mean, really, what part of the week do you think is going to be best, Armand? Because the weekend feels a little not that comfortable, really. So we don't have a lot of time this week that's going to feel really easy, do we?
I think it matters where you are with things, Margaret. I personally feel that Cancer moon at midweek is going to be something that tends to sort of draw people more inwards, more towards home. The moon is waning. It's in Cancer. It doesn't seem like a very outgoing, and we have the edgy Venus aspect. It seems like that might be a time to be a little bit more quieter and close to home. On the weekend, if you're doing well, if you're feeling good about stuff, then those hot aspects and the Leo moon, that should be pretty good for getting out. If there's tensions beneath the surface, they could blow. But it would be a potentially fun time if things are going well.
So true. It really all depends where we're at, and just to kind of be aware, just to keep our kind of awareness button switched on. This is not a week where we can just space out and think, oh, it'll all be fine regardless. So maybe just to kind of be aware of where we're at, what we really want to achieve, and how, the people around us, where they're at too, and how can we support them in it.
We are coming away from the full moon, though, and so we do have, as we come into the third quarter moon on Thursday, we do have a greater sense of control this week. We may have just as many issues, but we have a greater sense of control than we had last week. Last week, again, maybe at the weekend with the Uranus aspects, there'll be some surprises, but I still think that we have a little bit more sense of control. We can respond rather than react,
which is always really reassuring. And by the way, just to tell our viewers that you're going to be writing a blog on Jupiter and Scorpio as well. So just to go to our website that they can read up on that if they'd like it, in conjunction with the recording.
Additionally, well, people should be stopping by relationships and astrology all the time to see what's going on. There's a lot of stuff there, let's be
Absolutely. I totally agree. So look forward to seeing you next week, Armand. Take care.
Bye-bye, Margaret.
Bye-bye.